I recently learned a new term, gate lice. As you might expect, it's not a compliment. It's when people are going to go fly, go to the airport, and they get up near the gate when the plane starts boarding and sort of swarm there trying to cut in line, because if you've flown in the last couple decades, you know how it goes to get in an airplane. You have a printed off boarding ticket, or you have it on your phone, and you walk up, and in theory, standing at the correct place in line, and they scan it and it beeps, and you go on in. And this has gotten to be such a challenge that American Airlines has actually modified the beeps because it's gotten to be such a problem with people trying to cut in line and get in early that they've now designed it so there's a different beep for people who are trying to cut ahead. And this is not a big deal. I'm glad that American is doing this. As someone who has flown in the last couple of years, whenever I've flown, it's been with my family and flying with children. Not as much now, but flying with small children and needing to get everyone together, it's a little bit nerve-wracking. And so watching this happen and watching people cut in line, it's just been frustrating, right? But so it's not it's just frustrating, it's annoying, right? And while it's a small thing, it is part of something bigger. It's part of a bigger problem I think that you've probably seen. It's a problem that a fellow by the name of David Brooks has also seen as well. He's been grappling with some questions for the last couple of years, and one of these big questions is, why have Americans become meaner in the last years? It is his experience, and it is supported by my experience as well, that in the last decades we are seeing more and more people just be mean. Right? You watch at restaurants, listen to how doctors and nurses are being treated, teachers, how people act when they fly, right? I see this happening in America, and I don't know if it's happening in other cultures, I just know my own experience. But David Brooks writes about this, and we're going to be using some of what he observes this morning. He wrote an article, How America Got Mean, to give him his due. He put some serious work into this, and I appreciate it. He has a background. He's a Jewish Canadian who became Christian and married an American and lives in America now. It's a fascinating story to look into, but a guy by the name of David Brooks. So what he has looked into, and I agree with his analysis, is that there are a lot of attempts to make sense of why culture has shifted as of late. And there are places we can blame. We can look at technology and say, it's social media, the echo chamber of getting together with people who all agree, and so that everyone can get together and agree and yell at them together. And so there's a technology, social media reasoning. There's a sociology argument that can be made that over the last generation there's been a fading of the community organizations, and we've watched it happen. The Masonic lodges, scouting, bowling leagues, we are far more isolated now than we really have been in previous generations. So technology, sociology, there's a demographic argument too, that there's just a very significant increase in demographic pressure that we're really feeling. America, at some point in the 2040s, is going to flip over to being a majority-minority country, and that's causing a lot of stress as we talk about things like immigration, and so maybe that's part of it. So technology, sociology, demographics, economy. Economic inequality has risen to a degree that's just crazy in the last generation. Economic insecurity has left people feeling afraid and pessimistic. So what David Brooks, is he agrees that these are all happening. But what he points to is a problem that is simpler and deeper. And I agree with him. These are all causing stress, but our ability to handle stress has diminished because we live in a society in which people are no longer trained in how to treat people with kindness and to be considerate of each other. Selfishness is given free rein, and this is all rooted in a lack of moral formation. Moral formation is the way that we teach people to be able to restrain selfishness, to have the social skills necessary to negotiate life, skills like disagreeing in a healthy manner. Help people know what the point of life is. This is moral formation, right? And this type of moral formation is what America was focused on for the majority of its history. From the first years when of the Republic, when Noah Webster wrote in 1788 that, and I quote, "The virtues of men are of far more consequence to society than their abilities. And for this reason, the heart should be cultivated with more assiduity than the head." I don't think I've ever said the word assiduity out loud before, but I think you get the point, right? How we handle ourselves, our heart, matters more than our head. This continued in 1909. John Dewey wrote that schools should teach morality every moment of the day, 5 days a week. Up until the Teachers Union, the National Education Association in 1951, as part of its platform, wrote, "An unremitting concern for moral and spiritual values continues to be a top priority for education." A concern for moral and spiritual values. This showed up in the history of American education, from the education to in the books and the textbooks used, and then was reinforced by things like the YMCA, the Sunday school movement, Scouting, and all worked together to form people. As one teacher put in 1930, the one teacher put it, the purpose of education was to form young men who were acceptable at a dance and invaluable in a shipwreck. I thought that's kind of a fascinating turn of phrase. And this is done, this type of moral formation is done not through great feats and amazing acts, but through small practices and habits in a community of people who strive to serve one another. Right? This is not education as trying to raise people to do amazing and great feats, but to do small practices, to develop the habits in a community, trying to serve each other with a sense of purpose and support and being able to interact with each other. And we say this not with a sense that the founding fathers and the educators that came afterwards were perfect. Like, you look across American history, and America was founded by slave owners. And there are real issues with racism and sexism, and there are just there are issues that are baked into colonialism. There's some real issues in American history. The important key there is that the moral formation that was woven into America through education and through the culture provided ways to grapple with it. It's not that we were perfect, it's that we had the tools to grapple and get better over time, methodically. It's in the middle of the 20th century that this really started to change, and I think we're reaping it now. It was with the rise of books such as The Power of Positive Thinking. The assumption that people are just good. The most important thing is for people to get in touch with their true selves, that we don't need formation, we need self-understanding. And academia lost its prior sense of forming people and became the way that experts were trained. Experts in what? Well, experts in increasingly specific fields, but not experts such that were people who were acceptable at a dance and indispensable in a shipwreck. And so what has happened is American culture has become demoralized. American culture is amoral, you might say. We have entered a time when there was a survey being done asking young folks, teenagers, going into college, how to think about right and wrong. And people are getting answers like, if it feels good, it's moral. And as long as you're not caught, then it's not really against your morals, right? Just don't get caught. And this is this is not a surprise. Asking people to build up their own sort of moral way of life by themselves, it doesn't happen. We're not just waiting to discover some sort of inner goodness in ourselves. We need communities gathered to help us be morally formed into the practices of humility and goodness and service and having a purpose in life. And if it doesn't happen, and it's not happening often today, it leaves people uncertain and insecure and anxious, and this is what has led us to be so vulnerable to the tribalistic politics that has developed as just how things go now. The sort of us and them, we are good, they are evil, and without being without people being parts of community that practice simple, important practices of the moral virtues. Going out, being in community, being part of civic groups, helping with the youth organizations, then it's just, there's us and we're right, and there's them, and we fill up our lives with politics, and politics has sort of invaded too much. And thankfully, the response to all of this, and there is a response, we have a response, thank God. The response is not some sort of grand moral crusade, because that would be overwhelming. If that's not our response, the response is to attend to moral formation, to do what has faded. It's found in how we treat people on a one-on-one basis, practicing intentionally building relations with people around us, of all types, whoever is around us, loving our neighbor and hearing people and being patient with people and beginning and sustaining friendships and helping people through grief. And maybe the greatest thing that we learn to sort of counteract this sweep of the times is to continue to be people who handle divisions that otherwise fester and grow. And that's become the norm. How many times have we each seen over the last years friendships that ended because a division or a disagreement simply couldn't be worked out? This is so important. And this is where David Brooks sort of lays off, because he's writing to a public that he doesn't go into this depth, but this is where I connect to what Jesus is saying. This is so important that Jesus comes back to it multiple times. Right? Jesus comes back to the handling of moral formation with regards to handling conflict multiple times. It comes up multiple times in the Gospel of Matthew. And that's what Jesus is doing with the 12 disciples. He's teaching them, like we used to be, the approach that we used to use in America. Jesus is doing moral formation, right? Restrained selfishness, social skills like disagreeing in a healthy manner, knowing what the point of life is, knowing how to handle conflict is so important that he covers it twice. And in Matthew 5, he says, and is written, if you are offering your gift at the altar and there you remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift and go. Be reconciled to your brother, then come and offer your gift. Notice that Jesus isn't saying go cross a national border and broker a peace with a foreign power. Jesus is saying go to your family member. Go to someone who's tight with you. If you realize that there's a division between you and a neighbor, someone you know, someone that you have a friendship with, someone that you have known for a long time, someone whose life you are interwoven with, if you realize there's a problem, you get on top of that and you go deal with it right now. It is striking to think about this for two reasons. It brings up two questions. First, am I at peace? Real, genuine. Not peace as the absence of conflict, but peace as the genuine, I smile when they walk in the room. Like, am I someone who is genuinely building peace with my friends and family on a regular basis, such that I will, second question, such that I'm taking this so seriously that I would walk out of worship and go deal with this if I realize there was a problem. That is how important I put it. Now, Jesus comes back to this, Matthew 18, a few chapters later, right? If your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. If he listens to you, you have gained a brother. But if he doesn't, take one or two others along, so that every word may be confirmed by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. If he refuses to listen to them, go tell it to the church. Right? So the first time Jesus lays it out, if you have sinned, you deal with it. You grapple with it. Moral formation, right? This is how we do things. This is the practice you do as a way of life day in and day out. If there's a problem, you go grapple with it right now. And if someone has sinned against you, you grapple with that too. Now, the challenge here with the second time Jesus says it is if you have been sinned against. Like, there's a sense, like, if someone sins against me, my instinct is not that it's my responsibility to go to them. They're the ones who screwed up. Why is that on me? And Jesus, and I think it's interesting that this comes up second. Like, Jesus had to teach this to the first Matthew 5, like, if you have offended someone, you go handle it, right? Now Jesus is coming back to him and says, okay, let's ratchet this up a notch, right? Now, if someone has sinned against you, right, you don't wait for them to come to you. It is more important that you be running to them to get this sorted, rather than you wait for them to figure it out. It is more important as my disciple, the disciplines, the practices of someone who follows me. What matters more is not who got it wrong for why. It matters is go get it sorted. And if you need help, go get it. Bring someone. Bring multiple people, right? And it is shocking then as it is today, because just a few verses later, Peter goes up to Jesus and says, okay, so 7 times? And Jesus says, no, you are going to do this 70 times, 7 times. 7 being the number of completion and the repetition of it. Like, this is a way of life. You're not going to start counting on this. This is a practice. This is how you are being formed to live. So David Brooks, as I have argued, and as I agree with, points towards the meanness of our culture as being rooted in a lack of moral formation. And I think that's what we see Jesus doing here, morally forming. If moral formation is to help people restrain their selfishness, that's where Jesus says, let he who would be first be the servant of all. If moral formation is a restraining of selfishness, and then knowing what the point of life is, Jesus says, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and then developing the social skills necessary to be in community together, like disagreeing in a healthy manner. Here it is. Here is one of the most important skills we develop. And that's what we do here in this church, and all churches, hopefully. We are a bulwark of moral formation, a place where small practices weave together lives such that we become this community, a community that is formed to be together. And it is what we're talking about today. And if what we are talking about today is already woven into your life, if like everything I've said to you today is old hat and you've known this for years, that's awesome. Thank you. Please know that your neighbors need help with it. People you love need help with it. People who aren't as developed in this set of this way of life, these skills, need help with it. Our family, our friend, our churches, people of all ages need the support and help and encouragement to be people who, amongst all the other aspects of what moral formation looks like, need the support to be people who can reconcile and to work out differences in the way that Jesus taught us to live.